one of the first things that, I kind of had to do when I took over the department. We were very on-prem heavy, kind of old school, come to work, go to your cube, log in, do your work, go home, that kind of setup. And obviously when Corona got here in full force and everybody had to send workforces home, that wasn't very conducive. So we had to do a lot of things on the fly and make a lot of big infrastructure changes on the fly. And so that's kind of what kind of kicked off of the latest thing that we've done with IP Pathways, or probably one of the bigger things that we've done with IP Pathways, was making a lot of those infrastructure changes.
Yeah, great. I can only imagine that as the orders start ramping up and you're watching like, wow, okay, we're going to have to make some changes here because demand has skyrocketed for these packaged goods. So it had to have been a wild ride. So how long have you been partnering with IP Pathways? Were you partnered with us before the pandemic? And kind of tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so the relationship itself kind of predates me coming to Ultrasource. I believe it started early in 2017. I came on early in 2018. If I'm not mistaken, I think one of the first things that IP Pathways did for Ultrasource was do like assessment and virtual VM assessment, and implemented the technology for that, changed a lot of our infrastructure over to clients and virtualized servers and stuff. I think that was the first project you all did for us.
Yeah, great. I was just reviewing this morning, and it looks like we've partnered on lots of very broad, different projects with you all. So it's always fun to kind of be able to chat with partners that really use us for everything. So knowing that you didn't really select IP Pathways, we kind of predated your tenure. Do you know, like, what led Ultrasource to choose IP Pathways in the first place? Or if not, what qualities and projects have we brought to bear that have really kept us in the game for you all as a partnership?
Right. Well, I would imagine it's kind of the same for both. I can speak more to what, kept me going back to IP Pathways, or built that relationship to what it is now, where we're, I think of us in the true sense of the word as a partner. And I think that's the most important thing. You have a lot of companies out there that just want to sell you a service or sell you a product. They don't really talk to you about, okay, this is what this product's going to do for you, kind of get into the architecture of it. And I think that's been the really important thing for me. We run a very lean IT shop, so we rely on a lot of consultants and vendors and different companies that kind of help augment our staff. And IP Pathways has been a really good partner in that. So I think that's the thing. I mean, Jake, who's my sales rep, and then Dennis Brown, who works with most of our kind of architects and engineers, most of my requests, hey, I would like to do this. What does that look like? Or how can we execute this? And they've been pretty fantastic about that. So I think they're probably both the same. I know the VM stuff got executed very well. Even though that predates me, that was a discussion with Janet, who was the IT manager here before. And then, so I think start to finish, you guys have done a great job for us.
We appreciate that so much. That really is, as a sales leader, that's what we talk about on a daily basis. I'm so thrilled to hear that it's happening. And that is, we don't want to just be a sales team. We really want to be that partner that really solves problems. Honestly, that's what we're here to do. So I love to hear that that's totally happening for you and bringing you back to us. So let's dive into this project. So pandemic hits, and you're like, oh my stars, we need a lot of things. I think I read that the first issue was remote access. Is that correct? And kind of walk us through what that looked like.
Yeah, so as I shared, we were pretty, old school when it came to not just the technology part of it, but just the work environment part of it. So we really weren't set up for remote access. And to be quite honest, the firewall that we had at the time was not a enterprise grade firewall. It was on the docket to be replaced anyways. This just kind of kicked that ball into motion a little quicker. So kind of a very unique situation. We kind of got lucky in a lot of ways because we had been kind of running a Palo Alto firewall in parallel just to test it out, see the features, get the audit logs, see what that firewall could do for us that obviously our other one wasn't doing for us. So we had a demo unit here when the pandemic hit. We realized very quickly when we started to send people home that our firewall wasn't going to keep up with the access and the bandwidth and all of the things that go with that. So I talked to Jake and Dennis, and I was like, well, how quick can we get one in here? Because, we have the demo unit, but that's not a production unit. And they were like, well, let me look. And, everybody was kind of in the same position, right? We've noticed that technology became very hard to get from a logistics standpoint. Like everything took forever. Prices went up, all of that stuff. So we placed the order, but it was going to be a couple months before Palo Alto could get us a firewall. So we had to get pretty creative, and hopefully Palo Alto would play ball with us and be like, hey, we've got this unit. Do you mind if we put it in production? Because if not, at this current rate, we're going to be dead in the water. So luckily, they were able to do that for us. We had a Palo Alto engineer hop on with IP Pathways, and they took care of it very quickly. It was pretty honestly seamless, that transition. We did it overnight, came in the next morning, and it like nothing happened. We had VPN access, we had all that access that we were missing, and it was really a big time game changer for us. We would have been in a lot of trouble without it.
I mean, what a wild story. So you were starting to evaluate firewalls. Our team came in and was recommending Palo Alto. You get a demo unit, and then the pandemic hits. Is that kind of how this went?
Yeah. We had if I remember correctly, we got the demo unit like in December of 2019, thereabouts. We had it in place. We were going to run it for a couple months and just see what we could see. And then I think we had actually unplugged it, and we were getting ready to ship it back. And then everything kind of went crazy. And they're like, well, hold on. And so, yeah, I mean, it worked out really well for us. I don't want to imagine what it would have been like without it. It would have been crazy, crazier than it already was.
Right, definitely. I mean, I think people are thinking, man, that guy has done some good in his life. He's got some good karma coming to him by having that work out just that way. So let's dive in a little bit into how IP Pathways help. So obviously we were already chatting about firewall solutions and helping you kind of decide what type of firewall was best for the company. And then sounds like we came in and partnered with Palo to do hands-on work, right, and convert that, air quotes, to a production system. How else did we participate in really the full solution for you during the pandemic?
Yeah, so you guys do quite a bit for us. Like I said, we run a pretty lean shop, so IP Pathways helps us a lot with our VM environment and our network environment. So obviously with bringing in a new firewall, there was a lot of configuration changes that had to happen with our networking and getting all of that with our core switches and other stack switches and, updating all of that to work with, our vendors out there that we have open connections with for our ERP and our other pieces of software. So there was actually I'm making it sound a lot simpler than it was, but there was actually quite a bit of work that had to be done to make that as seamless as it was. And it, like I said, we did a lot of pre-work, and then when it came time to kind of flip the switch, we just plugged it in, did maybe an hour or two worth of extra work, and that was all done overnight. We came in that morning, and everything was off to the races.
So grateful to hear that. What an incredible story. So we'd love to hear from you. What do you think is next for the partnership? What's next for UltraSource and your business, and what are we solving next?
Yeah, so there's always something going on. There's always something you guys are helping us with. One of the bigger tasks that I took on when I took this position was modernizing our company as far as an information stance, right? Better technology, more efficient technology, all of that stuff. So we've been doing a lot of things with you guys. We're constantly going through what we have and optimizing what we have, refreshing. We recently put in a new disaster recovery cohesity, so you guys helped with that. We've done a lot of other work with adding security to our environment, from doing Office 365 MFA to doing other MFAs and things like that, getting us more secure. So from a networking, virtual environment to disaster recovery, I mean, you guys are helping us with all of that stuff, and that will continue as we kind of go more towards an on-prem to a cloud infrastructure. That's kind of our long-term goal. That's our roadmap. And so there's all kinds of little things along the way that you guys will be helping us with, and some pretty large things.
So great. Thank you so much for sharing. I would add multi-factor authentication is definitely the buzzword right now. I talk about it every day. So I'm grateful that you've got that in place, so you all are secure. And yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and hang out because we'll probably have more questions for you. But I am going to move over to Mr. Randy. Randy, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Morning. Want to share a little bit more? So tell me first, what is your favorite thing to barbecue? I got to know.
Probably brisket. I don't do as much brisket. I probably do more like pulled pork than anything, just because it's so cheap to buy. But my favorite thing is probably brisket.
Yeah, yum-o. Yummo, yummo. All right, talk to us a little bit. Well, obviously, we had a really kind of off-the-wall project that we executed with you. How did that get started? How did we meet? Take us back to the beginning.
Yeah, so I started in this role at the Mississippi MBAEA 2 years ago. And the AEA structure is kind of off the wall from a technology standpoint. We do special education gen ed services with school districts in Iowa. But then we also get media funds for doing other things, technology related things as well. So we historically have ran a fiber consortium for our public schools and private schools in our area. So we have about 30 or so members that we help to provide fiber internet for. And when I walked into this job, all the equipment was end of life and all the contracts were expiring that we owned. So we were one year out. Everything in education, when it comes to funding, is basically the next, like when they're expiring, you're looking at it a year in advance. So it basically was buy new ISP grade equipment and run a fiber consortium the way that we always have, or find a better way. So that's when I got in touch with IP Pathways to start figuring out what is even feasible to do. Can I not buy millions of dollars worth of hardware to run this fiber consortium? That required the schools still to buy fiber lines. They just had the fiber line ran to us instead of straight out to the internet. Or is there a way that we can facilitate it instead of owning the hardware and kind of outsource that ISP technology to another company? So that's where IP Pathways came in.
Yeah, excellent. So did you get that warning when you took the job? Like, you've got a very big problem to solve day one?
No, that was not in the job description.
Wow. Like, okay, we are going to roll. Let's play. Okay, so obviously big challenge, kind of open whiteboard, like we can solve this problem in multiple different ways. How did we start? Did we start at a whiteboard? Like, walk us through how the conversation began.
Yeah, I mean, it essentially started with just kind of high-level conversations. The as a service is a big, trend in technology. Everything's as a service. Firewall as a service is a known thing. But really, when it came down to it, this is more like internet as a service. There's firewall attached to it and all that. But, so it was really just trying to figure out what ISPs could do, what IP pathways could do, and how all that could kind of be wrapped up into a service that we can then extend out to our school district.
Yeah, it was really, I think, what's the word, when the stars align, because these are solutions that we've built out for other organizations. And I think it's a really unique one, right? It's not something we're maybe shouting from the rooftops in marketing, but a really unique approach to help you solve a pretty big business problem. So walk us through what the solution looks like today. What did we end up putting together for you?
Yeah, so essentially what IP Pathways does is owns the entire process. So we buy internet and firewall through IP Pathways, and then IP Pathways runs the data center side of the firewall for each entity in our consortium. But then, you guys compete between ISPs. So some of our schools have a Windstream line, some of them have a Mediacom line, some of them have a line from a local carrier who needs, another local carrier involved to get on a private circuit back to IP Pathways. And you guys really control all the complexity around getting those schools on a private fiber line back to IP Pathways to then pass out to the internet. I have a single point of contact. If I have any internet related issues with myself or any of our schools, I call IP Pathways. If it's a Mediacom issue, you guys are my point of contact. If it's a Windstream issue, you're my point of contact. So I'm not trying to manage a bunch of ISPs, manage a bunch of contracts and relationships. It's really singularized that support aspect for myself and for my schools, so then we can all focus on providing services to teachers and students. So like I said, it's a private circuit all the way back to IP Pathways that then you guys have a firewall attached to that. So it's even we have big 5,000 student school districts who are using that firewall as a full replacement for an on-premise firewall that in the past would cost them $100,000 to buy, and it's all included with the bandwidth cost of the fiber line.
Wow, so definitely a huge impact on you and your team as it comes to supporting these schools. What about end user impact? Have they noticed an improvement? What has been the chatter from an internal client perspective to you?
Yeah, so the historic reviews from our school districts were not glowing reviews on us managing and running an ISP. And there are all kinds of reasons why, we were doing really, this was predated me, but, listening to my team and understanding the problem, we were doing the best that we could. But, in education, our funding was kind of limited. So we couldn't buy big new equipment every time bandwidth increased. So we were really restrictive on how much bandwidth we could allow schools to increase to over time. We were really sensitive to how much, when schools started going one-to-one, we didn't have equipment that could handle one-to-one. Well, our equipment wasn't end of life, so then the decision was, do you buy new equipment when you don't have it planned, or do you limp along? And it seemed like we were more likely to try to limp along than we were to rip and replace high-priced ISP type equipment. So the biggest benefit to our schools is now there's no longer a limit. IP Pathways, we're, as big of a consortium as we are, we're not even touching the capacity that IP Pathways has already in place to be able to handle all the other stuff that you guys are doing. So ultimately, if a individual school needs to increase their bandwidth and firewall, it's a phone call. There's a cost associated with it, but it's one entity's cost. It's not, we're scaling it up based off of 21 public schools and however many private schools that are attached to it. So it's really taking a consortium approach, but singularizing the solution based off of each member.
I love it. Really unique. So what's next for the partnership between IP Pathways and Mississippi BedMed now that we've solved that one? What else are you thinking about?
Yeah, so, being kind of a centralized entity within the school districts, I'm always thinking at the consortium level. So we're doing a lot of the things, or I guess I should rephrase that. A lot of the things that we're looking at doing, we're looking at also, passing through to our schools as well. So we're in the process of moving on to Adaptive Cloud for servers. We are actively using the Adaptive Cloud backup disaster recovery solution as a service. And we're using the DNS web filtering client as well. And, we have school districts that are starting to use those. From a security standpoint, knowing that you have good backups and a system that you can spin servers back up to, because it's also attached to Adaptive Cloud, is a pretty big step forward for a lot of our schools. A lot of them had cold backups, but what happens if their server goes down? What happens if they have a hardware failure? You're waiting to buy a server, waiting to buy parts, and as it was mentioned earlier, you need a hard drive. You might be waiting 2 months to get a hard drive. Well, now with our backups in Adaptive Cloud, we can, there's some networking things that have to happen, so that's where the recovery plan comes into place, but we can spin that server back up almost in real time in Adaptive Cloud and get ourselves or a school district back up and running, in a matter of hours instead of, trying, just spending a day or two just to figure out what the plan would be. So that's kind of an active next step. The conversations that are happening now are all around cybersecurity. K-12 right now is the number one targeted industry in the United States, and it's potentially a big problem. Anybody in Iowa probably has heard of what happened with DMAC, the community college in Des Moines. So we're actively having those conversations. MFA is actually the conversation I'm having with IP Pathways right after this meeting. And again, trying to figure out how that needs to look in K-12, and then potentially bringing schools in to the fold with us as well.
So good. Yeah, as I said before, multi-factor authentication is definitely the topic of the summer. And we've got some unique ways now to even provide that as a service, so customers are able to quickly and easily adapt and move over. We have another client actually getting letters from their cybersecurity insurance companies now saying, if you don't have MFA in place, we have the right to raise your rate by in excess of 10%, which for this particular client is a lot. So if you out here, not Phil or Randy, but are starting to think about MFA, definitely give us a call. We can help you with that really easily and quickly. I appreciate you bringing up Adaptive Cloud. I'd like to chat about that just a little bit more, if that's okay. Yeah. For those that don't know, our Adaptive Cloud platform is really a proprietary solution that we've built in our IP Pathways data centers that allows our customers to log in, spin up virtual machines at whim, and you really build on your consumption. So it makes it a very easy way, whether it's for test dev or production, to be able to utilize our cloud services. So Randy, talk to us a little bit about how that platform is working for you and why you chose it.
Yeah, so I should have prefaced all this. Before this job, I never I guess was a believer in cloud infrastructure. More so because the cost was always seemed way more prohibitive than the benefit that it provided. Going this route with IP Pathways has led me into being a believer in kind of that cloud infrastructure. Getting things offsite that are critically important. The derecho was a big example of that. Historically K-12 thought, well, I have to have my server in the building, but then their building was down and they were trying to get ready for going into remote learning and teachers didn't have access to anything. Well, we saw 0 outages based off of IP Pathways infrastructure. Obviously an ISP-owned Windstream line might have been down, but as long as you could get internet connectivity, you could get to that service at IP Pathways, and it was basically business as normal. Having the firewall and VPN access, we could still work and function regardless of whether something out of our control was up or down. So the adaptive cloud stuff really does make a lot more sense. And from a pricing standpoint, in my experience, it's very well priced compared to alternatives, and it's got so many other aspects to it that really hold it up as well.
Yeah, really great. And what's unique about that solution for those that aren't using it yet or haven't looked at it yet is we're able to really help you find a hybrid strategy if you need it. So our adaptive cloud works really well with just co-locating equipment in our data center or all the other as-a-service offerings that we're bringing to the market. I think it really makes us unique, right, that we've got these different services that are able to all work together. So security, adaptive cloud, sounds like VR, obviously your internet, like what's left?
The nice thing about IP Pathways is you guys are willing to take that consultative view on things and, almost be like a sounding board. Like, these are the problems I'm having. What are the solutions? And you guys will have that conversation, I appreciate it from a sales standpoint. It wasn't high pressured. It was just, hey, let's have the discussions. Just get on a call with us. We'll work through your problem with you and come up with a solution. And then, I like to use the term cost efficient. People always say, oh, Randy, you're just cheap. No, I want to be cost efficient. Like, I don't want to buy the cheapest product and spend more over the life cycle of that decision than buying what I actually need and, saving money over the life cycle of that decision. And that's where I've found a lot of trust in the partnership with IP Pathways, where I truly do believe you guys will get me to that most cost effective or cost efficient model to achieve my goals.
So good. It's a really difficult thing to tell people that haven't worked with us yet that, no, really, we're not high pressure. We're here to solve problems. So we really appreciate when customers help us share that story, because until you experience it, it's like, yeah, everyone says that. No, really, we like to approach it this way. It makes our job fun. So what other questions do we have from the audience? I have finished kind of mine. Joe Shields, want to pop in and say hello real quick?
Thanks for calling me out, Sarah. Yeah, I was on mute. So, no, Randy and everyone on, I appreciate you joining today. It's some great stories. And, as Sarah said, we're working very hard to bring a lot of stuff to the market to help our customers be efficient and secure and, do all the things they need to do. So I just really appreciate everyone joining today and happy to talk to anyone about any issues they're having in the future.
Yeah, so good. Apparently we're doing, I don't know if you all can hear that. It's a very loud went right behind my office. Really, really good. Any parting words from our special guest today? Would love to hear from you, Phil. Anything else you want to share about our partnership or kind of how final parting words?
There we go. It's just kind of, more of the same. And I think Randy kind of touched on it with, the sales approach. I think that's I'm kind of a straight shooter. I've had a lot of conversations with Jake and Dennis and thrown a lot of things against the wall to see if they'd stick or get their advice. And I think that's probably one of the biggest assets to the relationship that I have with them too and with IP Pathways is sometimes they'll tell me, your idea is not the best. Here's a better way to do it. Or sometimes they'll be like, you know what, that's perfect and that's how we'll do it. And here's how we'll execute it. Here's the cost, go through the whole process, because, IT or information systems work, there's a lot of things that go into it and you can't know everything. It's impossible. So you have to rely on people to kind of fill in those gaps. And I think that's what the biggest part of this relationship has been for me and what has maintained it. Like I said, I inherited and I'm glad I inherited it. It's been a great resource and a great relationship. But that's the most important part to me is the gaps that we have in our department. We have a partner to fill this. So that's kind of where I guess I would end on.
Phil, I know
much, Phil.
No, I was going to say, I know you said you were kind of a lean IT team. How many people are on your team today?
2 full-time and 1 part-time, semi-retired. We're probably going to add, but I guess that's the one good thing. You guys have been such a great resource. We haven't really felt the need or hadn't had the requirement to add resources internally because where we've had to pick up the slack in certain areas, you guys have been able to help us with that, even with the explosive growth that we've had over the last year and a half. So, but yeah, for the amount of stuff that we take care of, we are extremely good.
So great. Thank you so much for sharing. Randy, any parting words from you? Anything else you wanted to share before we close up today?
I guess the one thing I would add is, while it's not like an aggressive sales cycle, there is still good follow through. I have some local IT vendors who I've worked with in the past, and to start, I would throw the ideas out to them, then I would throw it out to IP Pathways, and IP Pathways consistently would follow up and come back with solutions. And the local vendors keep saying, well, you can't always just keep choosing IP Pathways. And ultimately, the primary reason, other than just the consistency of the partnership, is you guys have the follow through. They want me to lead the discussion, whereas when I say something to IP Pathways, you guys take kind of ownership of it and lead along with me. So that's very much appreciated, and it's a great partnership.
Sarah, I wanted to chime in just real quick and just really thank everybody for hopping on today. I wanted to remind everybody who attended, we're going to send out a little gift card after this, so be checking your inbox. That'll happen today. But we do have a couple of users that were call-in users. So if you want to send myself or Abby a note, that we can make sure you get your gift card or put it in the chat, but we can't tell who you are, so we want to make sure that you get your card today. So I really don't have anything else. Sarah, I'll let you kind of wrap it up and kind of close out a few minutes early.
Yeah, definitely. We want to thank Palo Alto Networks again for sponsoring this event for us. We, as we talked about, implemented that solution for UltraSource, and we were excited to share those stories with you all today. We plan on hosting more events like this, so if you've got topic ideas or things you'd like to learn more about, please feel free to pop us a note. And don't forget, our account management team and really our sales team, maybe we name them something else, our business partners here for you to use. I like to say I'm a tool in my client's toolkit. So if you've got some problems that you're facing and you're ready to get a second set of eyes on them to help you solve those business problems with technology, that is what we are here for. We can't wait to chat and hang out with you, so just give us a call. But have a great day, everyone, and thank you again so much for joining us, especially Phil and Randy. Thank you so very much. Have a fabulous day. Bye, everyone.
You're welcome. Have a good day. Bye.